Rams rookie receiver Puka Nacua has another huge game against the Saints. Is he a top 10 dynasty receiver? All that and more in this episode of the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast.
You are Locked On Dynasty Football, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Here are your hosts, Marcus Mosher and Kate Madjuk.
Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use promo code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Joining me today, as always, is Kate Madjuk. You can follow her on Twitter at Kate Madjuk. You can also check her out at Pro Football Focus and Behind the Steel Curtain. On today's show, we're going to break down all of the news coming out of this Rams-Saints Thursday night football game. We're also going to do some commotion at the end of this show. Some players that you need to promote from your bench into your starting lineups in your playoff matchups. So make sure you stay tuned for that. But Kate, let's first start with our guy Puka Nacua, who had another unbelievable game. 9 catches for 164 yards and a touchdown. Also added in 2 carries for 16 yards. I mean, just an unbelievable season. You and I were talking pre-show. Do we think Puka Nacua should be a top 10 dynasty receiver right now?
I think so. And I mean, Marcus, it goes so far beyond the box score, right? Like, you have to watch the game to truly appreciate the box score that Puka actually posted in this game. Like,
Yes.
the strength after the catch, the ridiculous there's a ridiculous circus catch he made on the sideline that I thought for sure on first glance, I was like, there's no way this guy held onto that ball. No way. And then they replay it from just about every angle. And I'm like, no, this dude is for real. I think what I love most about Puka, and I think this is going to continue to propel his career forward. He plays with so much heart. He's got that dog in him for real. And it's not just the attitude. He is backing that up with production. And I think the biggest question people have, and I think as the season's gone on, is like, well, what about Cooper Kupp? I think Cooper Kupp either looks less healthy or he looks like he's slowed down. And I don't know which of those is the case. I would tend to opt that maybe he's just less than 100%. He entered this season not healthy. There's a real possibility that, like, sometimes when you start the season with a pretty big injury, like, you might just never be 100%. Maybe we're seeing that play through a little bit here. But I mean, Puka looks like that guy, and that I just, I think if you would throw draft capital out the window, there wouldn't be any conversation at all. We would just, I think, be fine saying Puka's a top 10 wide receiver.
So I've been a little bit hesitant to put Puka in that category because of Cooper Kupp. As you mentioned, like, first of all, Matt Stafford loves Cooper Kupp. He still had more targets yesterday than Puka Nacua. And I think there is a good chance that he's banged up because he had an injury coming into the year, as you mentioned. He got re-injured. He took a helmet to the elbow in this game, and it clearly impacted him. But I think last night was like the first night where I was like, you know what? The number one receiver in this offense isn't Cooper Kupp anymore. Like, it's Puka Nacua, and they're trying to do things to make sure that Puka can get open, making sure that he's the guy, the focal point of this offense. And I think especially going forward with Cooper Kupp's injury history, with his age, I'm not really concerned about Cooper Kupp anymore eating into Puka Nacua's targets. And Kate, you, again, something else we were talking pre-show, this offense just funnels the ball to like 3 players, and those are the only guys that are getting targets. Like last night, for example, we saw Matt Stafford throw the ball 34 times. We saw 11 targets to Puka, 12 targets to Cooper Kupp, 6 targets to Demarcus Robinson, and then Tyler Higbee had 3. That was it. Those were the only players that saw targets. So, yeah, I think it's reasonable to expect that Puka Nacua is going to average 11 to 12 targets per game with Matthew Stafford for the foreseeable future.
Now, I think folks will probably wonder, and this is something that I've wondered too about Matthew Stafford, his health, like his future in the league. And obviously, he looks very healthy right now. But how much of this production do you think you're going to tie to Matthew Stafford? Now, like, just to be clear, Matthew Stafford is under contract through the 2026 season. So, like, from a contract perspective, we Gucci, we're good. Like, you don't have to worry about that. But do you have any lingering health concerns about Matthew Stafford and maybe him retiring earlier than the length of his contract would suggest?
A little bit. He's also got some stuff going off the field that we don't need to get into. I could see him wanting to retire a little bit earlier, but he's also playing unbelievable. Like, he's been incredible the second half of the season. And I think some of my concerns about his health are a little bit offset by, I just think Sean McVay is a really good coach. And if Matt Stafford does move on, I trust that Sean McVay is going to get somebody in here that can run his offense. Obviously, nobody's going to be as good as Stafford in here, but I'm just not that concerned. I think Puka is really good. I think Sean McVay is really good at getting these receivers open and knowing how to use them to their full potential. I think he's a top 10 receiver, Kate, but let's go through the names of our top 10 dynasty receivers via dynastyleaguefootball.com, and we'll figure out where he slots in. So let's just run through the top guys. You tell me when we should start to have a conversation. Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, CeeDee Lamb, Amon-Ra St. Brown, A.J. Brown, Tyreek Hill, Garrett Wilson, Jalen Waddle, Chris Olave, Brandon Ayuk. Those are your top 10 receivers.
I have Chris Olave ahead of Jalen Waddle, but I think you could probably slot Puka right there in at wide receiver 9. So for reference, Garrett Wilson, wide receiver 7. I have Chris Olave, wide receiver 8. I think Puka's wide receiver 9. And then we could talk about Jalen Waddle, Brandon Ayuk, that whole crowd. I think Puka slots right in there. And I mean, you look at the age, he's 23 years old. He's already producing. He's doing things at the age of 23 that we haven't seen Jalen Waddle do. We haven't seen Brandon Ayuk do. And that's not to say that the production we've had from Jalen Waddle, like I know end of season, maybe we'll be talking about things differently, but I mean, Puka Nacua very well could be breaking the NFL record for most receiving yards from a rookie ever. Like this, we're witnessing something special. And I think, like, from an opportunity standpoint, yeah, I'll take Puka over Jalen Waddle any day. From an opportunity standpoint, I'll take Puka over Brandon Ayuk any day. Like,
I'm with you.
am I off base there at all? Is that where you would decide to slot him in?
I might even go higher, to be honest. I love Chris Olave, one of my favorite players in the league. I've got a basement full of Chris Olave jerseys and autographed football cards and stuff. I was watching
You're
the
like
game.
the bag lady, but
Yes.
Chris Olave edition.
Yes, I love Chris Olave. I was watching that game last night, and I'm like, I would trade Chris Olave in my dynasty leagues for Puka. I just think he's going to help you win more weeks. He's more consistent. And I know Chris Olave had a big game, but I think on a week-to-week basis, Puka is going to be more helpful for your dynasty teams than either Olave or Waddle. So, yeah, I have no problem slotting him over both of those guys.
Wild.
It's crazy how far we've come, but Puka is just legitimately good, and he fits this offense so well. He fits Sean McVay. He fits Matt Stafford. I'm all in on Puka Nacua.
I mean, once again, you cover up the draft capital, and we're not even having this conversation because it would be a given, which I think is just such a testament to Puka. But like, from an analytics standpoint, check. From an eyeball standpoint, check. From a dog in him standpoint, check. Yep. Puka Nacua is that guy. And yeah, wide receiver 9 in Dynasty for me.
I'm going wide receiver 8. We'll even go one more, but you and I are on the same page. Absolutely a top 10 Dynasty wide receiver. Okay, let's stay on the Rams side of the ball. I want to talk about Kyren Williams, who once again had another really big day. We will discuss him next. This episode is brought to you by DoorDash. Did the game go to timeout? Time to order in with DoorDash. Is it halftime? that is ordering in time. 2-minute warning. You got it. That is your cue to order in. Whenever the game clock stops, time to order in with DoorDash. There's no reason to root for your favorite team on an empty stomach. Order on DoorDash and save on all of your football watch party favorites. Order pizza, wings, sodas, burgers, or even just buns on DoorDash and get it all delivered without missing the game. I'm going to tell you, with so much football coming up this weekend on Saturday, Sunday, Monday, I'm going to be DoorDashing a lot this week. I cannot wait to just sit on the couch, watch football, order some pizza from my favorite places out here in Corey. Cannot wait. It's going to be so much fun. You can get 50% off up to a $10 value right now on DoorDash when you spend $15 or more on your first order when you download the DoorDash app and enter promo code LOCK23, subject to change, terms apply. Again, that is 50% off up to a $10 value when you spend $15 or more on your first order when you download the DoorDash app and enter promo code LOCK23, subject to change, terms apply. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. We wanted to let you know that Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. Okay, let's talk about Kyren Williams. Another really good day for him. 22 carries for 104 yards and a touchdown. Did not receive a target in the passing game, but that's okay. You're going to take the stats here. Where do we stand on Kyren Williams' dynasty value?
He keeps climbing the ranks, Marcus, and like I did not know heading into the season, or not heading into the season even, like amidst this breakout for Kyren Williams, I did not know if he was the real deal. And every single game I watch from Kyren Williams, I come away more convinced that Kyren Williams is just a really, really talented running back. Was drafted in the 5th round of the 2022 draft, coming out of Notre Dame, and fell a little bit. But I think a lot of that lack of draft capital that he received in the actual NFL draft just kind of a lack of athleticism. Like, he's not going to necessarily impress you in terms of his like speed, burst, in terms of a testing perspective. But I do think he shows more burst on the field than you would guess based on his athletic testing. I think he shows more power than you might guess based on that athletic testing. Now, coming out, just a really solid receiver, was always, involved in the passing game. But what I'm most impressed about throughout this entire season has just been his vision, his ability to make cuts, find open lanes. He sees the field like a guy well beyond his years that wasn't drafted in the 5th round of the NFL draft.
I have a hard time talking about Kyren Williams because he was somebody that I traded for before the season, and then I cut him like 2 weeks into the year, and now this bothers me because I don't have him. But let's talk about this rise for him, because going into the month of September, Kate, his overall ADP was 228. Without looking, do you know what it is going into December?
I know it's high.
26.7. Wow. Right now on Dynasty League Football, he is being drafted as RB8 in Dynasty Leagues, which I think, when I first saw that, I'm like, oh, that's wild. That's way too high. Then you start to look at like the names behind him. You're like, no, I'd rather have Kyren Williams. I'd rather have Kyren Williams than Tony Pollard. I'd rather have Kyren Williams than Saquon Barkley. I think what's so intriguing here is that Kyren Williams is putting up a big year, and he still has 2 years left on his deal, which we know that matters a ton when it comes to stability. I look at all the other running backs that are going in his range, and I have a hard time not liking him the best out of. I'll give you an example. Would you rather have Jonathan Taylor or Kyren Williams right now?
I was actually going to bring that up, Marcus. Looking at some of the recent trades involving Kyren Williams, guess who was traded straight up for Kyren Williams? I think it's very reasonable to say Kyren Williams. Like, look, we already talked about the trajectory of this offense. Matthew Stafford's here to stay. As long as he is, still playing this caliber of football. I can't imagine that he bows out of the game at this point. You've got Puka Nacua, who's just an absolute dog. And you've got Kyren Williams right there in the run game alongside him. He's 23 years old, playing the game as well as you could possibly ask him to do. And he doesn't have the touches on his body that Jonathan Taylor has. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think the injury history is nearly as much either. And I don't even mean to say that Jonathan Taylor is necessarily injury prone. It's just like
we're
Kyren Williams.
We're starting to see a pattern though with Jonathan Taylor. Like, he was not hurt at all. I think that the stat was he never missed a practice in high school or college, not a single one. And over the last 2 years in the NFL, has been dealing with his back injury, been dealing with a foot injury. He had a broken hand that's caused him to miss games. I mean, he's at like 1,200 rushing yards over the last 2 seasons. And listen, shout out to you, Kate, because you were on Zach Moss forever. And like, Zach Moss is just like a legitimately good player. And even when Jonathan Taylor's been healthy, the Colts have been wanting to use both of those guys, where Sean McVay he falls in love with the guy and he's going to ride him.
And I mean, Kyren Williams, like, impossible not to fall in love with. Like, I would encourage anybody, if you miss the game, if you have like the NFL Plus or whatever, go in there and rewatch Kyren Williams from this game. It's just absolutely incredible to see the way that he gets creative with running lanes. Shout out for GQ of Devi. Oh my gosh, what's it called? Destination Devi tweeted out that like he looks like Lev Bell out there, and that is 100. Like, couldn't put my finger on it, and then I saw that tweet, and I was like, he really does. The way that he can just like jump cut and keep going because he sees that lane available. And you know what? Like, Kyren Williams, a smaller framed running back, that ability to see the field, make those cuts, and avoid contact like that, that's going to help him from an injury perspective. Like, that helps some of these smaller backs. Like, maybe he puts on some muscle volume. You'd love to see that in terms of like generating yards after contact. But like, the beautiful is he's good at avoiding contact in general, just because of his vision. And I think that's something that's so impressive and just so fun to watch.
Let's run through a couple names just to see where you stand. Travis Etienne or Kyren Williams?
Ooh, Kyren Williams.
I'm right there with you. Devin Achane or Achan, I believe is how you say it. Achan.
Kyren Williams. Easily for me. Easy.
This one's a little harder for me because there is a scenario where Raheem Mostert moves on after this year and you just get.
Like, I 100% agree. But here's the thing, Marcus. We're not even seeing Devin Achane get a full workload in this offense. And he has dealt with health issues all season long. We know that, like, coming out of the draft, a big concern was that he does not have a big frame. And I think we're starting to see the effects of that. And he's not even getting a full workload. Give me Kyren Williams, who can play a third down role, can take 20 plus touches in a game and come out the other side.
I'm going to give you a really weird one. I mean, I think our listeners are going to think we're crazy, but Breece Hall or Kyren Williams?
I'll still go Breece Hall.
Yeah, so will I. Kenneth Walker.
Kyren Williams. Why not? Like, let's break the tie here.
You're also a big Zach Charbonnet fan, so that doesn't surprise me that you would go there. Last one. How about Rachaad White?
Oh, I'll go with Kyren Williams because I know Kyren Williams not as involved as a receiver, but I do think he's got just as capable a skill set as a receiver as Rachaad White if he gets the utilization. Plus, I think he's a much better runner on the ground. Like,
that's tough for me because of the passing game work. Like, there's just a floor with Rachaad White because of what he can do as a receiver. Where Kyren doesn't get that.
His floor as a rusher,
quite a bit lower.
Yeah. Quite a bit lower.
Yeah. All right, let's do some commotion, some players that you should promote from your bench into your starting lineups in week 16. We will get to that next. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. It is the easiest and most exciting way to play DFS because it's just you against the numbers instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks. All you have to do is pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. PrizePicks is the most fun that I've ever had playing DFS. I love how many different players and how many different stat projections that you can choose from. I also love that PrizePicks offers a reboot policy so that your entries stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. For football and basketball games, if you have a player who exits in the first half and does not return in the second, that player is rebooted. PrizePicks is the only daily fantasy sports platform with an injury insurance policy. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use promo code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use promo code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. Everydayers, we are going to be off on Monday. We do have a special show that's going to be posted on Christmas Day, so you make sure you tune in for that. Matt and Ryan back on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Kate, you and I back on Friday. Busy week, even though we've got the holidays. Okay, let's do some commotion. We know you guys are in probably the semifinals of your fantasy playoffs. Who is the player that you are promoting from your bench into your starting lineups this week?
I'm here to talk about Chase Brown, running back for the Cincinnati Bengals, who maybe I'm a jaded Steelers fan, but I'm in the mode of this defense is decimated. You start any and all players against the Pittsburgh Steelers. And that also applies to Chase Brown. He's had 9 or more touches each of the last 3 games. He's been getting work alongside Joe Mixon as a receiver, getting some work in the screen game. And you have the Steelers defense who they've already been decimated at inside linebacker. Nobody can cover the middle of the field. Now they're down 3 of their top options at safety. You have cornerback Patrick Peterson, who's going to be playing safety in this game. This is going to be a mess. And I do think that just that work as a receiver, that involvement, that trending upward. I love Chase Brown. He's led all running backs in the Cincinnati Bengals running back room with a 21% missed forced tackle rate over the last 3 games, averaging 4.5 yards per carry. He's going to have plenty of room to find some wiggle, I think, against the Steelers defense.
I think the Steelers might be without their top 4 safeties, right? Because no Minka, no KZ, no Kyon and Trent Thompson.
Yep.
Yeah. And there's a potential that Elijah Riley, who is on injured reserve, might not play as well. So you could be without 5 safeties. It's not great.
Safety.
Yeah. Well, and we should also mention, not only are they without all these safeties, but they're also without their top 2 linebackers, Quan Alexander and Cole Holcomb. So yeah, I think it could be a rough day for the middle of the field of that defense. So I like that call. Kate, I'm going with somebody who you named a couple of weeks ago. Clyde EdwardsHelaire is somebody that I'm starting this week. Now, we had a nice little bet on Clyde a couple of weeks ago. We're not going to do this again, but
no, we're not.
Isaiah Pacheco is coming back this week, but I wonder how healthy he really is. Jerick McKinnon does not seem like he's going to play. He's missed the last couple of practices with a knee injury. They're playing the Raiders at home. If you know any of the history about like Mahomes against the Raiders, he loves putting up points against his team. They scored 31 a couple of weeks ago, like one of their few offensive explosions. I just won't be surprised at all if it's another one of these 15-touch games for Clyde EdwardsHelaire and he gets in the end zone.
Yeah, I like that, especially if he's kind of on cleanup duty. Let's talk about a rookie, wide receiver Parker Washington for the Jacksonville Jaguars. They're headed to Tampa Bay this week. You might be without quarterback Trevor Lawrence. He's in the concussion protocol, but that means backup CJ Beathard is going to get the call. And you know what we always see when we see backup quarterbacks coming in, we see those connections to some of these like 3rd and 4th string wide receivers. And Parker Washington going to get some playing time. Zay Jones considered week to week with a hamstring injury. Both of these teams are in like a must-win situation. But between that, I'm not saying the quality of target from CJ Beathard is going to be all that high, but the Bucs secondary, of course, has struggled throughout, most of the season. Since week 10 giving up 180 receiving yards per game to opposing wide receivers. That's the 4th most in the league. I think Parker, we're seeing a increased role over the past 3 weeks. He's had 6 or more targets 2 of the last 3 games. He's had touchdowns in 2 of those 3 games. I think this could be a really interesting spot for both a volume play and maybe rack up a little bit of yardage against this Bucs secondary.
All right, last one for me, and you're going to need to help me. So I am in a super flex league where the quarterbacks don't score a ton. They actually get penalized a lot for interceptions. I think it's 4 points for a touchdown, -3 for an interception.
Wow.
So there's a lot. Yeah. So there's a lot of quarterbacks that are available on the waiver wire because our benches are short. You only have 5 bench spots. So a lot of these mid-tier quarterbacks are just available. So of these quarterbacks, I want you to tell me which one you would play this week. Nick Mullins against the Lions, Ryan Tannehill against the Seahawks, Easton Stick against the Bills, Mason Rudolph against the Bengals, Taylor Heineke against the Colts, Aiden O'Connell against the Chiefs, Trevor Siemian against the Commanders, Joe Flacco against the Texans, Bailey Zappi against the Broncos, or Case Keenum against the Browns.
Marcus, that's some pretty ugly work. Can you start from the top again?
Nick Mullins, Ryan Tannehill, Easton Stick, Mason Rudolph, Taylor Heineke, Aiden O'Connell, Trevor Siemian, Joe Flacco, Bailey Zappi, Case Keenum.
This might actually be me being a little bit of a homer here, but I might roll with Mason Rudolph. I do from a standpoint of what Mason Rudolph does well. He can throw a nice deep ball, and I hope that the game plan is going to emphasize that a little bit this week. Bengals not necessarily been the strongest secondary. They've allowed plenty of big plays through the air. I wouldn't be surprised, Marcus. We had talked about this being a favorable schedule for Mitch Trubisky. Obviously, Mason Rudolph a bit less mobile, but I don't know. I don't hate it. From a defensive matchup, I don't mind it.
I'm going to whisper this really, really, really quietly. I agree. I do because remember Pittsburgh just a few weeks ago, the only 400-yard game they had on offense all season and over the last 3 years came against the Bengals on the road. Now they've lost DJ Reader. They've lost a couple other guys on defense. I just won't be surprised if Mason Rudolph has 275 yards and 2 touchdowns. I just won't be.
Yeah. Cam Taylor-Britt, is he out for this?
Yes.
The whole,
yes.
This should, and again, I keep saying this every week, it should be a great game for the Steelers. We'll see. But Mason Rudolph, I maybe
Rudolph on Christmas Eve
lead your
you
can't say no to that.
Playoffs.
Yeah.
It's poetic. All right, that is it for today's show. We want to thank you for making Locked On Dynasty your first listen every single day. Go check out our YouTube channel. It means everything to us to go subscribe, like our videos over there. We are free and available on all your podcasting platforms. Go follow Kate on Twitter at Kate Majuk. I'm at Marcus_Mosier. Have a happy holiday this week. Enjoy all the football games, and we will see you right back here on Tuesday. Cannot wait. Should be a ton of fun.